A lot of parents have a hard time separating accepting their child just as they are and approving of every choice their child makes. Unfortunately, we live in a world where, especially in LGBTQ discussions, acceptance is synonymous with approval. But this simply isn't true. We experience this every day in our lives, maybe with a coworker or a member of your extended family. We may not agree with the choices they make or with what they believe, but we still accept them exactly as they are, loving them and respecting them along the way. And we can do this with our kids too. We can accept them and their beliefs and decisions even without approving of them. You see, acceptance is rooted in surrender, and surrender is always accompanied by grief. Grieving our lack of control over our children's lives and hearts is a continual, lifelong process that every parent would do well to get comfortable with sooner rather than later. We can wholeheartedly accept the truth that our child has the God-given free will to live their life however they like to. We can also accept them for who they are without condition or reservation, just as God does with every human. And when we accept them in this way, we convey that we love our children unconditionally, just as God does with each of us. Our love for our children is not dependent on complete agreement with them, just as God's love for us is not dependent on our absolute understanding of and agreement with Him. Now, to be clear, I'm not insinuating that acceptance is devoid of boundary. I think we see this with God. His love does not change for us, no matter how we exercise our free will, but He does implement boundaries for us. For example, He doesn't allow the indwelling of the Holy Spirit for those that have not agreed to live under His statutes. And in the same way, we can wholeheartedly surrender to our child's autonomy and free will, accepting them just as they are, even while not approving of their decisions or perspective. But that doesn't mean that we need to violate our consciences while doing so. We can absolutely uphold boundaries to aid in a clear conscience while we unconditionally love and accept our children. Affirmation, on the other hand, insinuates approval. Though we may not be able to approve of or affirm every decision our child makes in life, LGBTQ related or not, we can absolutely still accept them, both their free will and them as a person that we love wholeheartedly without reservation, all the while maintaining connection with them no matter what. Let me give you an example from my own life. When I was 20 years old, I was in a desperate pursuit for love, belonging, and fulfillment. I was weary from spending years searching for it in every person, place, thing, or substance that I could think of. One day, I finally had an epiphany. Ireland. You heard me right. Ireland, I was convinced, held all the answers to my problems. The thing is, though, is that my parents didn't agree with this decision of mine. They thought that I would spend a lot of money and time and effort to engage in something that might be dangerous for me and would probably end up making me feel even more lonely, unfulfilled, and lost than I already did. But because I was an adult and they couldn't exercise control over me in that way anymore, they told me plainly and lovingly that though they didn't agree with me and they were worried about the effects of my decision in this, that they loved me no matter what and that they would support me no matter what. But there were some boundaries that they set out. They decided that they wouldn't help fund my travels and that they would not be able to make a visit out there to come see me, barring, of course, an emergency. But they assured me that they wanted to remain in contact while I was there, and they wanted to be a part of my journey through this. They were excited that I was excited and wanted to know what adventures I was encountering while I was abroad. Their response to this kept the line of communication open between us and maintained connection so that when I got to Ireland and eventually found myself broke, lonelier than ever, and more lost than before, it was them that I turned to for comfort and for guidance. And so at that time, when my dad finally confronted my perspective and told me, Ellen, I think what you've really been searching for this whole time has been right in front of you. It's God. You've gone from person to person, place to place, thing to thing. You've even moved to Ireland and you still haven't found what you're looking for. Maybe it's time you start looking for love, validation, and acceptance in God. You see, I wasn't able to hear that message from my dad before I left for Ireland. But because of my parents' acceptance and unconditional love, even in the midst of their disapproval, it provided the safety that I needed to turn to them in my rock bottom moment of need, when they were able to finally speak into my situation and when I was finally able to hear it. You see, acceptance does not mean acquiescing. Acquiescence and approval isn't necessary for deep connection with our children.